Hello, everyone. I'm Raven, and I'm delighted to be sharing this teaching regarding the significance of 2020 and its relevance for our shift of our consciousness, especially the shift of a new paradigm that will affect not only on the personal level, but also on a collective level. So many of you already know me. You're receiving this because you have been studying with me currently or in the past, and being perhaps invited to watch this as friends or family of my students. So some of you may not have met me before, just to maybe introduce you to my background. And I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and so my background is very much East and West. My mother was of English and Chinese heritage, and we grew up, of course, at that time was the British colony in Hong Kong. So I was very much exposed to both Eastern and Western, and the religion that I was brought up in was Catholic. So that has informed me deeply regarding connection to the divine. So since I was a child, I have felt this direct connection with a presence beyond what the church taught me. So by the time that I was in my late teens, the church's dogma no longer resonated with me. So part of my growth and journey has been, like most of you, perhaps on a search to discover, well, what is the true purpose, or what is the true meaning, authenticity. And for quite a long time, I was lost in that and just doing the external journey of studies, marriage, family, like many of us when we first started. But a crisis awoke me in 1985. And in that crisis, I was really stuck in the abyss of darkness, filled with such depression, despair. And with that, something cracked open. Rumi had always said, the Sufi poet, that there's a crack in everything. There's a crack in our wound because that is where the light can enter. So that was how I connected to the light within me that connected me to the cosmic light. And in a split second, all of my suffering was released and healed. And I felt part of the planet, part of the human realm, and understood about suffering. And when I came back with that message, I was in this beautiful peace existence. Nothing was, getting me into feeling out of balance. Of course, it lasted a few weeks only. As a widow with two young kids, straddling two jobs. So 2 weeks being calm and connected was actually, for me, magical and miraculous. But as I came out of that, I was called to research and study what was the healing power of this consciousness that brought me to Cao Jung, brought me to Taoism, energy work, and Buddhism. And with that, a deepening of this transpersonal realm, and also related to energy. So that has been my past, and also brought me to Tibetan Buddhism. So about maybe over 20 years ago, I found my true lineage called Burn, which is an indigenous religion of Tibet. And the Burn not only encompassed the highest wisdom called Sukchen, but it also brings that wisdom and understanding into different aspects. One of them is called the causal vehicle. or you may know it more as shamanic. So I felt very much at home, with the wisdom aspect, helping me to understand the shamanic web and the energy web. So now you might be, wondering, why am I going to be talking about planetary shift and alignment? I'm not an astrologer, and I am not an astronomer, and yet I have been called to be very much connected to the shift of the cycles of the moon and how the planets affect our moods, affect our consciousness and our energy. So that is where I am called. It's about understanding how certain alignment affect our awareness. So before I share with you about 2020, which you may already recognize, there has been this gathering of energy. If you look at our world, something has been shifting. A lot of the shadow, a lot of things that, fear, and divisiveness, corruption of power, all of that has been coming up and waking us up. We have seen this in the past couple of years, waking us up to stand in the light of our truth, to break the chains that bind us. So if you can begin to recognize that this is part of the evolution of consciousness. So before I speak a little bit about 2020, I would like to talk a bit about actually 8 years ago, 2012. For some of you, you may have remembered that 2012 winter solstice, there was a lot of discussion regarding as if though it was the end of the world. What it was the Mayan prophesied that on solstice, winter solstice, December 21st, the world was coming to an end. Not what we thought, not the physical world, but that an era, a paradigm has come to an end. So the Mayan, to give you a little bit of background, had always been studying the planet and downloading information for thousands of years. In fact, their calendar is related to the planet Venus, and it is related to 260 days. They have actually plotted all of the eclipse, the events, and noticing what was going to happen. So they calculated that by December 21st, 2012 was the end of what they call 5 great cycles, which is 26,000 years. And what was the ending? What was going to end was the paradigm of a way of being in life. They prophesied that this is a shift to another aspect of awareness that is related to space, to ether. And it is about recognizing the truth, recognizing union of opposite, male, female, and of oneness, unity. So, and astronomers actually says that on that day, the solar system is actually, for the first time in whenever they have been calculating, was the closest to the galactic center and to the Milky Way. So the Mayan prophesies that on that day, the sun is going to be in conjunction with the galactic equator and the Earth and the Milky Way. So the solar system is set to enter the darkest rift of the Milky Way, without even for us to understand the consequence. But perhaps you may begin to sense since 2012, there has been a shift of energy. And you could see so much, of the shift by the time 2015, 2016 happened, of so much of the shadow coming. It's always been there. Our fear has always been there. Our divisiveness, our prejudice, but this has all been brought to the surface because we are poised to have a quantum leap in our consciousness. In chaos theory, it is said, and this is science, it says that when we are ready to go through a shift in order, in our order, we first go through chaos. And this chaos is not a regression to the past, but that in its shift, it is going through its spiral, bringing up whatever it is needed. So it is always part of bringing light into the dark into the light, this dance of awareness. So we are being poised to shift into another paradigm. So on 2012, not only winter solstice, we have shifted that the solar system, the solar, which is more the male energy, blazing sun, is now conjuncting, going in, meeting into the darkest part of the Milky Way. For some, it is like the feminine. But what is also important in 2012, which is where was my calling, was that in June 6th of 2012 was the end of a cycle of what we call the Venus transit. In the Mayan, remember the calendar is based on the Venus cycle. Also, one of the gods, the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, it is said that when he crossed over, he was, reborn in Venus. So there is a huge connection with Venus. And by the way, Venus is what we call the morning star and the evening star. Venus accompanies the sun as it rises, part of the year, and it accompanies the sun as it sets. So it is like the first bright sun in the morning or in the evening. So you can begin to sense the power of that, the importance of Venus. And in my background, my work also brought me since 2007 to connect deeply with the feminine wisdom of Mary Magdalena. And her background is also connected to the priestess order of Isis, and it is connected to Venus. So I will not go into the detail in this teaching, but in my online course beginning in March, I will be talking about the sacred feminine, going through line by line the gospel teachings of Mary Magdalene and the significance of how that is affecting us. So take a moment. I know that it might be a lot of information, but the key thing is the ancient Mayan has prophesied that we are poised for this paradigm shift. This paradigm shift is not only about the winter solstice, but earlier, in June, Venus is that planet that will traverse the orbit 8 years. And during that 8 years, with this orbit, it meets the orbit of the Earth 5 times. And it forms actually in the cosmos a 5-point star. For some of you know, 5-point star is actually very prominent in many of the tradition, like the Rosicrucian, the Path of the Rose, and also in southern France, there's actually a place near Udal that the people claim that the sky rained down 5-point star stone, which I've had the fortune to have gone there and found these amazing stones that are 5-point stars. So more about that when I teach the Sacred Feminine course. So for me, when I first awakened in 1985, I was given a message that I was to be the beacon for the Sacred Feminine. And of course, I had no idea what that meant. But I trusted, and along the way kept connecting with that, which culminated in 2007 when a vision took me to southern France and to Mary Magdalena. And then from there, I began to immerse in the gospel teaching. And also by that time, I was already deeply in my Tibetan Buddhist in the Burn tradition as well. So in some ways, my coming home to the Burn lineage, the lineage that really take me to the wisdom. allow me to return to the Catholic mystical roots that has always been there. And that root is very much similar in its highest teaching that is related to Gnosticism. So in 2012, the Venus transit signaled an ability for us to actually see and witness the Venus transit. Remember, the Venus transit is every 8 years, but it's not visible to our eyes. We cannot see it. But certain years we can. So 2004 and of course 2012. The next one will not be until 2117. So 2012, Venus was visible to our human eyes. And quantum physics says everything is in the wave. But when we can observe it, it becomes a particle. It becomes in this reality. So what really was important for 2012 was the arising of Venus, which is related to the feminine, to the Magdalena wisdom, and also to the Mayan calendar. And all of that brought into 2012. And the Mayan elder says that this is the beginning of a new paradigm of bringing the opposite together. And of course, it culminates and ends in 2020. So I have been working with, since the last 8 years, of deciphering, decoding, being open to the message of the feminine and how the planet has been giving us certain information. So that takes me now to 2020. So what is happening? So there has been this gathering of energy. And remember, part of this shifting to another paradigm, we have to go through chaos, we have to go through shadow. And that is where the feminine really enters. The feminine understands death and rebirth. The feminine understands the cycle. And we, in this embodiment in our women, we're affected, especially by the moon cycle. We are affected by a great deal of the energy. We carry the ability for birth without, it's with this trust, it is with this surrendering to the mystery. So the feminine is very much about the invisible, about allowing, about surrendering. So the last 8 years, there has been this fluctuation. There has been so much of the fear, so much of this we thought was going to be this, parallel, this linear shift, after the presidency of, a wonderful president. We thought, oh, okay, humanity has learned its lesson. We are going to keep growing, without recognizing that that is part of the evolution, that we are being brought again to another cycle of bringing the shadow up. And so 2020, not only is it a year that of planetary alignment, it is for us here in the United States would be another opportunity to have a different kind of leader, or perhaps similar, we don't know. So it's again up to us to awaken. But it's not only United States, it is global. So much of this is arising, the divisiveness, the fear-mongering, the abuse of power, which now take me to 2020. So what is the significance of 2020? So before I began gathering information about 2020, I have actually felt that 2020 was going to be powerful. And the last few years, every 2 years, I've been going on a pilgrimage to Peru, to Nepal, to work with the earth energy or the mother mountain. And not even, understanding the planetary shift of 2020, I knew that I was to go to southern France to take my students to visit the sacred site of Mary Magdalene and of the Black Madonna. So, and I also going to be doing a actually very intensive teaching on this special day without even knowing the information. So this is about January 12th of 2020. On January 12th, the planet is a phenomenon called the stellium. What is a stellium? Stellium refers to a cluster of 3 or more planets that is conjunct in the same house or same sign. Yeah? Conjunct meaning that planets are meeting within the same zodiac sign of our cosmos. So this is significant because what's happening in the year 2020, and especially on January 12th, is Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn. The last time this occurred was 735 years ago. The last time Saturn and Pluto conjuncting in Capricorn was 500 some years ago. And that was before that, 2 months before this happened, it was when Martin Luther broke free from the Catholic Church and started the Protestant movement. So astrologers have always looked at these stelliums, how these stelliums, especially with Capricorn, it signals a huge shift of paradigm, right? So that is where we are being poised. So again, we are already entering. It's not so much that January 12th, that's it. We have been gathering the past few months. We have been gathering this whole energy. Certain beliefs may be already getting us to look at, to examine. So to understand the stellium, and now you understand stellium, now you understand is a cluster of 3 or more planets. Conjunct means that they meet. They are close to one another in the same sign. All right. These are very important to understand because the sign of Capricorn, this has not occurred in how many hundreds of years, okay? So what is the significance? Right? So first, Capricorn. Capricorn, it's an earth-based signs. It is related to a sense of maturity. It is about recognizing, it's like a way that we walk on this earth. So it is very earth-based, right? So that's Capricorn. It gathers us for mastery as well. So it is not like a Venus. Venus is about love. Capricorn has this fierce energy. It's very yang energy, getting us to go into action. It shakes us up. So Saturn, it's ruled by Capricorn. So what is the quality of Saturn? Saturn, it is said to be the taskmaster. It constrains our desire. It gets us to also to own, to say, what is my responsibility? So it's very much related to, institution, certain responsibility, way that we are structured. It is very physical, very much about physical structure. So Saturn is about physical structure. It is about earth. Capricorn also, it is an earth, based energy and element. So both very much the earth, very much related to how we walk this path. But more so than that, Saturn is about the bigger picture as well. It is gathering us to see how are we showing up, very practical as well. How are we paying bills? How are we working with our professional, our career training? It is all about how have we earned? How have we earned? And with this earned energy, there is this karmic consequences that we can now bring to Saturn in Capricorn with Pluto, and the third planet is Jupiter. So what is Pluto? Pluto is the death and rebirth. So in some ways, for me, it is very much related to perhaps the Dark Mother, the Black Madonna, that understands death and rebirth. Pluto reminds us life is impermanent. It reminds us to treasure what we have, to deepen our transformation, to allow all of the intensity, the underbelly of our humanity to come up. So Pluto and Saturn has been gathering up steam. So now you can begin to understand why so much of the shadow has been coming up. But it is looking at Saturn, institution, structure. What is working? What is not working? Maybe take a moment and see, has your structure been shaken? Have you been thrown into certain emotions? So this is part of this planet that is affecting us. So why do planets affect us? So one thing to add is the moment we take our first breath, at that moment, astrology would say, oh, the time of your birth and the date. They will look at your planet. So that is how we are affected. When we are born, that breath that we have connect us to the energetic alignment of the planet, of how it affects us. And even though we may not be in a particular sign, all the planets will affect us, in certain ways. So it is through that energy that we can begin to sense that 2020 is propelling us to go through this huge shift that has not happened in 700 some years, especially 500 years ago with Saturn and Pluto. But now Jupiter, what is Jupiter? Luckily, Jupiter is about expansion and optimism, right? So Jupiter is wanting to expand, but with an optimism and with abundance, and it amplifies. But what does it amplify? It amplifies also our needing to see the death and rebirth. What is dying off? The structure, old ways of being. And this is exactly what the Mayan has been prophesizing, that we are indeed shifting into this new paradigm. They have spoken about this, a new paradigm of what? Of unity, of the male and female, of sacred partnership. But first, it is about bringing the feminine. Without the feminine first coming, honoring the feminine, the sacred masculine cannot arise. We have not had this evolution truly on this global level. The feminine has not been respected. Feminine is not just about women, but definitely we women have not been, truly, seen as equal. And but beyond simply being male female is the feminine principle of collaboration, of connection, of being in this invisible realm, of allowing, being this vessel that can support. So it's very much relating to space, to being this vessel. And that is what the Mayan says, that we are shifting into this new paradigm of space, of ether. So we are clearing the clutter. We're clearing what has, been cluttering the space of our heart, the space of realizing we are interconnected. So fear has been coming up, feeling like you don't belong together. It's like you're the outsider. The feminine is inclusive. So all of this is coming and shaking us up. But more than that, just before the stellium on January 12th, there's a powerful full moon lunar eclipse on the 10th. This full moon eclipse, the moon is actually in Cancer. And opposite the moon in Cancer is actually the sun. And the sun with many planets, like there are like 6 points. There are other planets, they're all in Capricorn. So again, what is Capricorn? Mastery, calling us to really look at this structure, this earth, getting us to really say, now is the time to really awaken. Right? It's very much the earth. Right? So on January 10th, there's a full moon. And with full moon, it's all about completion, ready to let go. What has come to fullness, so that you can now release, and again going into the cycle of the moon, into the new moon, into darkness, right? So between now and full moon, especially with Cancer, it's all about emotion, about home, feeling this need for security. So it's very important to recognize that this might actually amplify for you. But as we are walking on a path of awakening in consciousness, it's important to recognize too that it is not about, believing in astrology and then we are okay. This information is to help us perhaps understand why we may feel certain things strongly, and how can we bring that into our practice, into our meditation, into our healing. It is important now more than ever to take time away to reflect, to be quiet. Especially the full moon is in Cancer. It is calling us to go within. The Cancer has it's the crab sign, getting us to go into this inner sanctuary, in our inner shell. So meditation is very important now to help us connect to our true essence, to help us into the presence, into simply being, and support us to not get swept into our emotions and into our beliefs. But you can also begin to see why the meditation will be amplified by the full moon and by the stellium. So when we bring this into our meditation, into our healing, we have a potential. When the stellium happens or during full moon, it's like as if though that is where the veil is the thinnest, and that we can actually be poised to have a quantum leap in our consciousness. So that is the purpose of why I wanted to share this information and the importance of 2020. Not only is this gathering together of this very rare phenomena that will propel us, but that it amplifies what has already happened in 2012 of this new shift. And during 2020, there are other stellium and other powerful gathering. The most important one, before I end this, is that next winter solstice, December 21st, 2020, it is the beginning of a new element. It is said that all the planets have been in Earth sign for about 140, 160 years. And on December 21st, 2020, we are shifting into Aquarius, into air sign, which means that instead of focusing more in the earthly plane into materialism, we are poised to shift into air, into more about ideas, into more perhaps that invisible realm, into the energetic. And for the first time, we are really shifting and evolving our consciousness, perhaps to a sense of what the Mayan says, the union of the opposites, of the male and the female energy. So take a moment before we end this recording. I would like to guide you all into a practice. As you gaze within, take a moment, connect to your body, to your posture, to recognize that every cell, molecule, parts of our body, science have shown that it has crystals and stardust, minerals. We are interconnected. Quantum physics says if you keep going into each molecule, it's simply space and a vibration of light. Sense the breath that is flowing in you. Breath is very much connected to inspiration. Feel that in every breath, you are receiving this breath from the space around you, the space that has always been there from the very beginning of time, the space that contains all the waves of information, allowing us perhaps to connect to the ancient wisdom of the Mayans, to other traditions that have been working with planetary shifts, that understood the importance of evolution, of healing. Embody this information deep within you. That every breath, expanding your awareness beyond this physical body to the space that is beyond, into the space that is in the universe. Feel the Milky Way, sense it. The presence of the stars, the planets. Allow this information to flow into you. Recognizing that we are poised to shift into this new paradigm of the union of male and female through the birth of the sacred feminine. Allowing our hearts to open, allowing the old beliefs to dissolve. What is no longer serving you? What has been coming up, grabbing hold of you? Can you now allow the breath of awareness, the recognition that we are supported, that we are poised to connect to something bigger, to show up with this mastery as Saturn and Capricorn, and Pluto saying, it's time to die. It's time to see the light and how we have abused power. And Jupiter bringing abundance, bringing a sense of expansion, expansion of our light, expansion of our compassion and of our wisdom, to bring light to where we have been constrained, to where we have abused power, to the old patriarchal system. This is how we are beginning this new decade. And with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter meeting numerous times throughout 2020, we are going, and in Capricorn, we are going to be influenced by these qualities. Take heart if you are being caught in your emotions. Remember now, we are poised, we are gathering this energy, allowing us to be empowered to show up in a different way, to allow ourselves to bring in this mastery, to bring in sense of abundance, but most important, to come back into our heart, to feel from our heart the connection to the galactic heart, accompanied by the morning and the evening star Venus, to remind us everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change is this infinite awareness of our soul light, of our connection that is eternal. Take time to prepare to go within before the full moon on January 10th, and especially on January 12th, those 2 special days, to be in some kind of meditation practice, healing practice. As we connect through our meditation and healing practices, that means our awareness can shift from those identification with our fear, with our dualistic aspect, into this sense of oneness, a sense of interconnectedness. This is the gift that we can now bring to this new decade. And recognizing that 2020 throughout the year is Capricorn coming up again to say, walk this path, become aware how you're walking. Be practical, yet coming from this caring. Not fly and being dragged into your emotions and desires. As you expand, also allow the Saturn energy to contain, to serve you for this self-mastery. Saturn and Capricorn and Pluto, Jupiter, all are saying it's time to mature. We are poised not only personally, but on a collective level to shift to another maturation of our evolution. It's a powerful time to be connecting with others on similar path. Take time to rejuvenate. Take time to feel the breath that flows from the space, touching your heart, your innate radiance that is connected to the radiance that is in the universe. And as we complete this, feel the blessing, feel deep appreciation for yourself, for your courage in walking this path. How important it is that for those of us who are walking this path, to be there for others who may get lost, who may get into the intensity can we show up not only for ourselves but for others. And to realize that as we show up for ourselves, we are actually benefiting all beings. So, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It gives me tremendous joy to share this information at the end of this decade and as we enter into this new. And I wish you all this beautiful journey of awakening and of deepening, and that perhaps with this understanding that you can now ride these waves and recognize that we are being poised to shift. Thank you very much. Blessings to you all.